Good morning, safarians, and welcome to the sunrise safari. And what better way to start off our sunrise safari than with two giraffes in front of the sunrise? Isn't this a wonderful way to start? Courting pair of lovely mammals. Female on the left, big dark male on the right. We know him. We're fairly familiar with him. We've been watching him for the last few safaris. He's still on his mission to catch a lady's attention. Doesn't seem to be having much success with her. She seems to be far more interested in her breakfast. And for those of you who don't know, my name is Jamie. I have Brian on camera with me this morning. Scotty D is also out with Tebs on camera. We have the lovely Kirsty and Nikki in FC. Eugene doing his usual technical genius work. So at the moment we are parked on Philemon's Cut Line on Djuma, and we come to you live from Djuma and Arathusa game reserves twice a day. And the joys of live safaris is that you just never know where the day is going to take you. Hey boy, what do you think? Might even manage to win her over today. Definitely courting. He's staying right up close to her. You can see that incredible difference, both in height and in color, between the two of them. The pale female, much shorter than he is, with the bones in her head, including her ossicones, much less prominent than his. You can see how much more, I can only describe it as knobbly, both his forehead and his ossicones are. Yeah, girl. I don't know if it's the same female that we've been seeing with the calf. I haven't seen her calf around her, which is not uncommon. Baby giraffe do often spend quite an extended period quite separate from their mothers. I'm not too sure though. I have to be honest, I didn't pay attention to the identifying features of the female that we were watching. Oh, duh. Okay, well, there is a calf. It is right in front of me. Got distracted by mom and dad, or mom and a strange male. Mom and her male companion, let's phrase it like that. And don't forget to send through your questions on #SafariLive on Twitter, or your comments. And you can also do that on questions@wildearth.tv. And we love to hear from you. I'm on my way, well, I was on my way to Arathusa to see what happened to that incredible pack of wild dogs that we saw yesterday. More on that later. But I thought a really nice, peaceful start to the morning would be a good idea. So it's definitely the same trio. He still hasn't managed with that particular female. He's been trying for at least 2 weeks now. Here's the little calf. You can see why I missed it at first, hidden behind a bush willow. Hello, little baby. I'm not sure what you think about all of this. Now, as you can see with this little calf, it's nice and pale in color, just like mom. I guessed it at about, I think I guessed about 3-4 months of age. So still very light and actually still slightly disproportionate, although you can't see it at the moment. But if you could imagine that you could see the neck, it's always slightly shorter in proportion to the rest of its body and the standard big grown-up giraffe shape. And the reason is, of course, they're born with extra long legs to help them keep up with mom. And that means that their necks have to be a bit shorter so that they can actually duck under mom's belly in order to suckle. Although at this point, this little giraffe is largely weaned. It will still be taking opportunities to suckle from mom whenever that male decides to let it come close to her. Both Paul and Clown Sharon have suggested he is the Casanova of giraffe, without success apparently. She's not having any of it. As she wanders away, you can, as I said, see that incredible contrast between the two of them. And Debbie, you were wondering if male giraffe are always darker. And yes, in my experience they are. I've seen 1 or 2 light-coloured giraffe. It's a combination of the aging factor. Giraffe do go darker with age, but there's also a genetic aspect involved. So I've seen some incredibly light-coloured females, 1 or 2 light-coloured males, but that's less common. And generally the males, when they reach the maturity at about sort of around, I would say, 8 to 10, that they start getting this really dark colour. As soon as she moves a little bit, her, what would we call him, chaperone, is constantly with her. And that little head bob that he just did is a very typical giraffe courting movement. It's almost like a nod and a wink. Still, no success. I discussed that I was surprised by his constant accompaniment when she has such a young calf. Apparently it's not that abnormal for them to come back into estrus relatively quickly after they have a baby. But she certainly made him work for any kind of attention from her. That also in itself is not uncommon. Basically what she's doing is she's got an extended estrus period where she gives off all the right smells, but she's not quite ready to mate yet. And in that way, and it's common with all species of animal, or mammal at least out here, in that way she assures herself that in that extended courtship period that there isn't a better male that could come along at the last minute to try and fight off this particular male's attentions. He's pretty big though. I mean, he's a fairly mature giraffe bull. And we'll probably find, although we haven't seen it, that he's seen off any other male. There we go, head up again. Nope. Not going to happen, buddy. Not yet. Don't think she's interested. I mean, you have to give him some credit for his persistence. He has certainly put in the legwork in this respect. You can see, I mean, you can actually see it in his body language, that protective stance he's taking. Matching oxpecker pair. One on the female, one on the male. A beautifully peaceful way to start the morning. Cindy's watching in Tennessee and wanted to know if this female is in estrus or if the male would be interested anyway. And Cindy, I suspect she must be, just by the protracted period at which she's been interested. I speculated when we first spotted them that maybe he was a bit fooled by her pregnancy hormones, but I think it's a little bit late for that. I mean, her calf is, as I said, no longer tiny. So it's not like the situation where the impala males were fooled by the smells given off by the females during their birthing process. So I think she must be in estrus, to be honest. I think it's quite a protracted estrus. So she wouldn't be in full estrus, as in she wouldn't be quite ready to mate yet, or fertile, but she's starting to give off the right scents and pheromones. She'd probably be... Which hormone is it that spikes during ovulation? Estrogen. And luteinizing hormone. So she'd probably, I'm assuming it's similar in giraffe as it is in people. So she'd probably be giving off that particular scent that he can smell. Now he's kept everything away from her, or all other giraffe threats, and to an extent that includes her calf. And Computer Man, you were wondering whether a giraffe male would ever attack a giraffe calf. I don't think so. I mean, you'd probably find there'll be one or two really rare recorded cases. I certainly have never heard of it. But what it probably would do is just keep pushing its body between the female and her baby. I don't think he's kept her completely away from access to her calf. It does happen in large males. So the immediate example that springs to my mind is rhinoceros. At about 1.5 years of age for the calf becomes one of its most stressful periods of its life, because at that point it is still suckling and very much attached to its mother, but the mother comes back into estrus, and male rhino can be exceptionally protective and aggressive over a female that they're courting, and it's a long extended period courtship phase, just like with these giraffes. And the male often can be exceptionally aggressive, particularly if the baby itself is a male. And sometimes, in rare cases, the male does attack the calf, and actually in rare cases has been recorded to kill the calf. It's unusual, and it probably speaks more to the aggression of that particular male. And even in those circumstances when that male is particularly aggressive, there's even cases of him recording, or cases recorded of the males killing the females when they're rejected. So the female rhino do something very similar to what our giraffe cow is doing now, which is just walking away, although it gets a bit more aggressive in rhino. Heads down, horns thrashing, and a lot of huffing, puffing, and squealing from all parties concerned. He's going to give it another go. Matterick, you were wondering why he doesn't try anything, and that she must find him quite boring, just standing there. I guess he's waiting for some kind of sign. He does try it every now and again. Quite possibly he's been trying for days, and at this point is actually a little bit tired of attempting to use up his energy trying to actually physically perform the act. I've never actually seen giraffe mate. I've seen this courtship many times. So there you go, Kerry, in New York. I've never seen it happen. I'm waiting. One day it will happen. You know, you spend enough time out here and you get to see all kinds of magical things, as our regular viewers are very much, oh, he's going to try. No, he's not. And that is why he isn't trying anything, because every time he does, she gives him what could only be described in South African colloquialism as bat. Hey, Brian, I think that's a fairly good description. She just gave him bat. There's the little calf still. I will reposition. They have moved off right behind us into some dense vegetation. Let's just watch the calf for a moment. And while we do, it gives us a chance to answer Dave in Wisconsin's question about how many calves the average female giraffe has in her lifetime. And this is what I love about these live safaris, is that people ask questions that I should have considered but actually haven't. So let's just give it a bit of thought. The gestation period for a giraffe is about 15 to 16 months, depending on the prevailing climate conditions and the area that they're in and the individual itself. So let's put it at about 15 months. So 1.25 years. A female giraffe will probably have her first calf at around, let's say at around 2.5, 3. She can live for quite an extended period of time. Let me just think about this. I'm trying to work out. I mean, my guess would be somewhere in the region of about maybe 6 or 7, but that is essentially a guess. If any of you have a better idea as to the average number of giraffe calves, obviously they're not going to calve every single estrus cycle. I'm trying to see, while we have a look at that beautiful baby, if there's a number somewhere. I've left my big reference book at home. I was looking something up the other day and I forgot about it. How unfortunate. Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm 2 years out. The female will actually have her first calf at about 4. And if she can live up to, let's say she lives up to 20 years, which is pretty much the lifespan of a giraffe, she has a calf, let's say, every 2 years. So you're actually looking at about 8 calves, roughly, although I think that's a very high estimation because you'll probably find that they start to become less fertile as they get older and probably actually stop going into estrus towards the end. Yeah, so 6 or 7 actually is about right, give or take, my guess. And this baby doesn't seem too stressed by mom's current occupation, or currently being occupied by that big male. It's definitely the same male. I mean, viewers will be very familiar now with his almost star-shaped patterns. And obviously this calf is, I would say it's fairly certain that it's the same female and calf couple. And I'm also fairly certain, for those of you who've been watching over the last few months, that this is the calf we saw suckling all those months ago. The female's been casually avoiding him, but Linda in Washington, you wanted to know what she will do when she is actually ready to mate. Well, Linda, first thing that's going to happen is she's going to stop moving away from him. She'll probably urinate, and he'll go up and sniff, and he'll phlegm and grimace, get a good idea that she might actually be ready this time. And if he's really lucky, she might actually not just stand still, but reverse back towards him. That's usually, for big mammals like this, that's usually the sign that it's time that she's ready to mate. Maybe we get lucky and I'll see my first giraffe mating moment, and I'll be able to share it with all of you. But at the moment, judging by the way that she's casually just avoiding him, I don't think she's quite at that point yet. Well, it's been a lovely way to start the morning with our friendly giraffe. And I want to make my way across towards Arethusa. Let's see what's happened with those wild dogs. And while I do that, let's head over to Scott so that he can say good morning to you all.
Hello everyone, and welcome on board with myself, Scott, and Tibbs on camera. I've been checking very carefully on this road. We're quite close to our eastern boundary, and there's some male leopard tracks on this road. They're not very fresh though, so I think they're possibly from a couple of nights ago, but it can be very difficult to distinguish between tracks and how fresh they are exactly, especially when you've been away for a couple of weeks like me, so I'm a little bit rusty, but so good to be back. And it's remarkable how dry the bush is. I didn't get to explore too much yesterday afternoon, thanks to Karula presenting herself to us very early on the drive, so we got to spend almost the whole drive with her, and we didn't travel very far, so really looking forward to exploring and seeing how much things have changed in the 2.5 weeks that I've been away. Thanks very much to Kevin and Lucy, who sent through some updates that they heard some interesting hyena vocalizations last night on the Juma waterhole camera, which is a live camera 24 hours a day. And it's got a really good speaker on it that picks up incredible audio. And Kevin and Lucy heard something interesting. Just going to stop here to show you these leopard tracks. There's not much to see actually, but let's jump out quickly. Okay, I'm completely wrong. This is actually a hyena track heading into Juma. I thought it was a leopard track heading out of Juma. We are on our eastern boundary here. And again, it's not a very, very fresh track, but I need to get my eye back in and make sure that I don't make some more mistakes like that. But while I'm out of the vehicle, it's very useful to check road junctions carefully for tracks. And that's because animals use the roads just like highways, just like we use them. It's easier paths to travel along. plans for the morning, like I said, is just to explore a little bit, see what's changed, familiarize myself with the area that we get to explore. And who knows, hopefully we'll get lucky and bump into something along the way. It sounds like it's been a tricky couple of weeks for the Safari Live team. There hasn't been a huge amount going on, and that's kind of normal, I guess. The fluctuations, animals come and go, and luck also comes and goes. I'm fairly certain there's almost always a leopard on our property or the area that we can traverse. Obviously tracking those animals down can be a little bit more tricky than we sometimes expect, and that's what keeps us on our toes. But really hoping that some lion come and visit us. It's been quite some time, I hear, since the lion have been around. A very, very big thank you to Elena in California, who's a whale watching expert and leads, I think, whale watching tours. And she says she's spread the word to 6 of her guests, and we can expect that we've got 6 new members of the Safari Live family. So a huge thank you, and we can all tear a page out of Elena's book, because the more people we tell about this and the more people we get on board these safaris, the more places we can go and explore together. So that's something very important to remember. I know I did my fair share of marketing while I was on leave, and it's fascinating how few people actually know about this concept. And when you tell them about it, the first thing they do is often scratch their heads and shake their head in disbelief as to what we actually do. And it's easy for us who have been involved with it for a little bit of a time now to become complacent and not realize how cool this product is. So often for me, removing myself from it and being away from it is a good opportunity to remind myself of how much fun it is being here and what a crazy, crazy concept we are involved in. So spread the word. And thank you again to Lena all the way in California. If any of the 6 people who you've told about it are watching, please let us know. And I know there's a lot of people who watch the shows but don't really get involved, and obviously we're happy for you simply to watch and not necessarily chat to us, but we do love interacting with you. I know Nikki's uncle Philip in Cape Town, he could be watching, and he's one of the silent viewers. So Philip, if you are there, hello, and good to know you're around. We only actually discovered that her uncle enjoyed the show when he told us about it. We didn't even know he was watching until we were sitting around a dinner table with him a couple of weeks back. Now, even though the leopard tracks that we had that weren't too far away from us here weren't hugely fresh, he could still be in this area. So that's something important to remember, not to lose hope, even though tracks might not be fresh, or even though you may not even have tracks. You can still get lucky, just like we got lucky yesterday and simply drove straight into Karula while she was perched up on a termite mound right next to the road. Hello to Michael, 17 years old, and he would like to know what is the best time of year to come on safari, and he is an up-and-coming wildlife photographer. Good thing to get into. I love it myself, Michael, and I guess it depends on what you're looking for photographically in terms of coming out here. The vegetation usually in summer, this isn't the best example because we are in a drought, it's very thick and green, which which can make for tricky photography because it's not as easy to see that far, and you've often got a lot of dense vegetation which can cause obstructions, but it can also give you great photographic opportunities. Having a leopard's face covered by a green bush with just her eye poking out would make for a wonderful photograph. Whereas in winter, generally it's very dry, not nearly as green, very brown, so the colors are different, and you can see a little bit further as a general rule. In terms of my opinion as to which is the best time of year to come, I think it's winter, or anywhere kind of approaching winter or towards the end of winter. And the reason for that is that the temperatures allow you to spend longer periods of time out during the day, and the longer you can spend out here, the more chance you have of seeing cool things. So I would suggest coming in winter if you'd like to spend a lot of time out on safari, whereas in summer, because it gets very hot, it's almost unbearable to spend long periods of time out, especially in the middle of the day. But then again, it will depend on the area you're going to, Michael. So good that you ask these questions, because it's definitely worth researching it very closely. The area you go to in Africa, the weather conditions there, the game viewing in that general area. So many, many different factors that you need to factor in when planning a safari. But what I would suggest is, while you're at home, keep firing away with your camera, even if it's with little birds or animals in your garden, pets, dogs and cats, just so that you keep honed in on all the different buttons and settings, and that you become very quick on your camera. Because one thing that I've learned with wildlife photography is that moments don't wait for you, and to get those perfect shots while things are unfolding quite quickly, you need to be very, very quick on your camera. So that would be a little hint before you come out, to just carry that camera around wherever you go and become one with it before your safari kicks off. So, quite excited. We are approaching the dried pan, which used to be the Buffalo's Hook waterhole, and even though it was dry before I left, I'm still interested to see how much it's transformed and how much drier it's become. And that's just around the next corner. As I mentioned a bit earlier, there were some updates of some interesting hyena audio, possibly a fight last night. And Sarah in Ohio is interested to know my thoughts on what's been going on with the hyena clan over the last few weeks that I've been away. And Sarah, all I can say is that it's remarkable how much interaction has been happening, especially kind of violent interactions that we've been lucky enough to see, or maybe unlucky enough to see. Either way, it's important that we do see these things, even though they can be very hard to watch. It gives us great insights into what is going on in the hyena community. All I can say, Sarah, is that there's obviously a lot of shifting. It's kind of almost like election times. Every couple of years, it's time for a new president, and a similar thing has happened with the hyena society. It seems like there's been quite a few changes, and there's some really interesting stuff going on. But because I haven't been back for very long, I haven't had time to really chat too much with everyone about exactly what happened with the fights. All I know is that it sounds like there is a new queen. Okay, well, a few interesting developments here. First, there's this gabion, which are very useful to prevent erosion, and it's just rocks that are piled into this mesh cage. That wasn't here before I left, but very good to see that it is here to prevent this kind of gully eroding, where you can see all these branches. The branches are also very useful to throw into erosion gullies, because it allows small bushes to grow. You can see one little blade of grass and a little kind of green bush growing there. And the longer that's there for, the longer it will allow small plants to grow up without being fed on, and therefore kind of solidify that bank with their roots. So a bit of upkeep and maintenance here. And then when you look at the waterhole, it's remarkable. It's full of little tufts of green, and those weren't here when I left, and they probably haven't been there for quite some time. I don't think this waterhole has been this dry for many, many years. So a few changes, and now I'm just scanning around just to make sure there's not a leopard or a lion or anything interesting sleeping under a bush. Let's see if we're not skipping a beat here. Nothing to see initially. And if you can't see anything, don't lose hope, because often your ears can help you to detect animals. And we've been driving for quite some time now, so maybe let's just keep quiet for 30 seconds and see what we can hear. Now, the benefits of just stopping and listening is that you can hear for further than you can see. But for now, it's just the morning bird song. And it even seems that the birds haven't kind of fully risen yet. Maybe they're waiting for some sun rays and some sunshine. But a very calm and peaceful morning here in the Sabi Sands. Okay, good. Sharon in Pittsburgh, and thank you for your kind welcome back. It is so good to be back in the bush, especially after a slightly longer than normal leave. Sharon is interested to know what I am most excited to see now that I'm back. And that's a good question. Hard to say initially. Just generally being out here, getting back on foot again, tracking a leopard or tracking lions or anything. The art of tracking is something that I've missed dearly since I've been on leave. So I guess, yeah, maybe that. The tracking and finding exercise of an animal, if you manage to execute, is such a rewarding thing. As great as it is bumping into an animal like Karula yesterday, completely unexpectedly, with absolute luck on our side, no skill involved whatsoever, it's hugely rewarding when you do manage to pull off a tracking exercise. Speaking of which, I think I may have just seen a track back there, but it could be my mind playing tricks on me. It's incredible how the power of the mind can help twist and contort random objects into whatever you want them to be. And I fear that may have just happened again. There were some elephant tracks here. Interestingly, the tracks of an elephant, they've got lots of kind of veins and small cracks rather in their feet, and it creates almost like a map of tiny little lines, and all of those lines can really confuse you and look like toes of a leopard or a lion. So I think that's what happened to me there. So yeah, Sharon, tracking down animals would be good, and then just readjusting to the bush and getting back into the swing of things is always exciting. It takes a couple of days after being in the hustle and bustle of a city. It feels like you're kind of out of place when you return to the bush. But what I was secretly hoping Sabi Sands to communicate with one another between drives on major updates of lion, leopard, wild dog, cheetah, kind of the predators, anything else of importance that's been happening. And I just saw one message from James asking for an update on Shadow and her possible cubs, as an area was zoned on Arathusa where they thought she had cubs, and I was so excited to hear that. It seems like it was a bit of a false alarm, and Shadow doesn't in fact have any cubs that we know of at the moment. But that's something I'm really excited to share with you, is following the growth of leopard cubs and just being able to appreciate how cute they are. It's been a long time coming, and we've been here for over a year now without filming any tiny little leopard cubs. So that's something that I'm desperately hoping for. We had some luck with lion for about a month or two before the Birmingham boys came in and killed those cubs. So we've had some luck with lion, but not yet with leopard. So that's something I'm hoping for. Good. Well, I'm about to dip down into a low signal area on Inyala Road. So we are going to send you back to Jamie while I skirt through this area, and we'll catch up a little bit later.
Brian and myself have arrived in Arethusa, and I've just literally 5 seconds ago got an update from the Arethusa guides, and unfortunately for this morning, the wild dogs have crossed south across the Arethusa boundary and are on their way towards Londolozi. It's amazing how fast those animals move. So for those of you who were watching, or missed, sorry, not watching, you'll know this already. For those of you who missed the sunset safari yesterday, we were busy sitting looking at a feather right on the western boundary of Arethusa, and VM pipes up oh so calmly, wild dogs, and there they were right in front of us. It was such a nice surprise, and they proceeded to then really get us all moving incredibly quickly. I'm just going to say good morning to Sean. I will finish up our story. Morning, Sean. How are you?
Thanks.
Hi, guys.
Oh, good.
Yeah, across south.
Hofmann's, Bottom boundary.
Cool.
So far.
Next time.
The Brummies are bringing the sticks.
Yeah, it's. Where are they at?
The nets.
Nets.
Far.
They must
I
come
think 3 of them are
outside.
breakers, big teats. And the female that has the cubs, I didn't see any good suckle marks or anything like that. So
All right, well, we'll see.
yeah.
We'll send them our way at some point.
Still, it's nice green grass.
Yes.
Amazing, man. Around Northbourne Pan is beautiful.
Cool, man.
Have a delicious morning.
Yeah, cheers, Sean.
Stay safe. What's your thumb looking like today? Little squid. Cool.
Cheers, guys. The wonderful Sean of Arethusa. Right, so where were we? And then we'll discuss that conversation with Sean. So, wild dogs proceeded to chase a steenbok, chase an impala or herd of impala through the Arethusa Lodge, which for the guests that were there must have been the most thrilling experience. I mean, how awesome is that? Right across their front yard. And then I lost them. I lost them for, in the space of 10 minutes, that they killed and devoured a female impala. And in that space, because it was starting to get really dark, and wild dog generally, they're diurnal animals. They don't really like to move around at night, particularly cloudy nights like this one, where there's absolutely no ambient light for them to be able to pick up on prey and predators. So they would have actually probably spent the night in this donga. And somewhere in the space of the sun coming up, in the last 45 minutes or so, they've covered probably, sorry, it's a bit loud in my ear, they've probably covered a distance of easily 5 kilometers. But they're making their way, they've gone straight through into Hoffman's and then down across towards Malamala. Absolutely astounding the way that those animals can move. And then, just to give you an idea as to what Sean and I were discussing, looks as though there's a couple of pregnant lionesses, Styx lionesses. The rest, one of them, at least one of them, is mating with the Birmingham boys, or one of the Birmingham boys, on a Nets property, which is further south and further east of where we are at the moment. Hopefully at some point they will decide to rejoin our ranks. And thank you for that update from Clay. So Clay's been watching the camera at Mporo, and apparently there are 5 lionesses on the camera there. I wonder which 5 that could be. Really the only options in that area is unlikely to be the Talamatis. They don't really move that far southward as far as I know. I could be completely wrong. I've never seen that lion pride. My guess would actually be most likely that it's the Nkuhuma pride, which means that Junior has gone wandering again, possibly. Sorry, distracted. Which he is doing. I mean, from what we understand from the updates we've been receiving, Junior is kind of coming and going, which is normal behavior for a lion of his age. At some point he will go and stay gone. But at the moment, because the Birmingham boys have been so distracted in other areas, he hasn't really been pushed away from the pride yet. He's actually spent longer than normal, but then again, it's also because he's on his own. He doesn't have a litter mate of the same age or close to the same age to accompany him. So unlike the Birmingham boys that had the strength of family numbers, he's got to make it on his own, or hopefully, as we're all hoping, hook up with another young male lion, unrelated male lion. Lions are quite happy to do that. They're not too fussy about their coalition mates as long as they've got safety in numbers, or strength in numbers. If you're a male lion, that's where the advantage lies. I'm sort of working now on autopilot in terms of navigating my way around the drainage lines of Arethusa. I like this area. I've had a lot of luck in this particular side of Arethusa. What on earth did you get there? Oh, it's going to fly too far away. So nest building drongo. I think it's a drongo. You're over my head. Sorry, we'll get back to roads in a moment. It's just got such a stream of something. Look at that. How cool is that? I don't know what that is. I think it might be a snakeskin. Look at the way it's moving. I mean, it's not an actual live snake. It can't be. It wouldn't be blowing in the wind like that. But it is, I think it is a snakeskin. I think that's a starling. It's difficult for me to see in this light. Try and look with my binoculars. How cool is that? I thought it was a drongo. I'm wrong. Oh, gonna come back. It is a snakeskin. As it flew over. Well done, Brian. Shame poor Brian had to try and contort himself there to get a vision of that. Whatever's going on here. Try again with these binoculars now. Okay, it's abandoned it, or not abandoned it, but it's got caught in the knobs on it. It is a starling. Now there's 2 starlings. It's wrapped up in the top of the branches there. That's really interesting. Now, I'm not entirely sure what this is all about. And if the starling has picked it up for... I mean, they can't really eat snake skins. It's got no nutritional value, really. I mean, there's a bit of keratin in there, but there's not much more than that. I'm trying to figure this out. I wonder if it didn't pick it up as a nest padding, but then why fly backwards and forwards over our heads? This is a first for me. I've never seen a bird like a starling carrying a snake skin. I've seen lots of birds carrying snakes, but not a snake skin. Sure, your guess is as good as mine. It's broken off a piece of it. What are you planning on doing with that? I don't know. This is a mystery to me. It's one of the things I love about... Oh, now you've got a bigger piece. You broke it. You've broken it up. Nest padding, maybe? I mean, I guess snake skins are pretty soft. Maybe it's the newest thing in interior decor in the starling world. Maybe it went to grab a little bit of it and accidentally ended up with the entire snakeskin. I don't know. Brian is the first for me. And gone again. Keep flying behind us, which is terribly inconvenient of them. I have no idea. Absolutely no idea. Flying backwards and forwards between the tree and now back onto the dead tree. I am perplexed. Completely and utterly perplexed. Maybe it was a male trying to give a gift to the female, and he's got it terribly, terribly wrong. One of those gifts where she's looked at him and gone, "Oh dear, darling, that's not really suited." They do that. Male birds bring gifts. So, Margaret, you've suggested... Oh, apparently you had a sighting with... Oh, bye. Maintain good nesting material. That was my first guess as well. Makes sense. I mean, it's fairly soft. I've never seen a full snakeskin. I mean, that snakeskin for that little bird must have been easily that long, blowing in the wind. That was highly entertaining. I think, Margaret, you're right, and I think James has hit the nail on the head. It would be for nesting material. Interesting, though. What confused me, because my first thought was nesting material, what confused me was the way that the bird flew backwards and forwards. I don't know if it was going back to show its mate that it had found something like that for a good, nice nest padding. I don't know. Completely, I guess nesting material, but it was fairly entertaining. That's definitely a first in my book. Oh, they've gone back again to the top of that... What is that? I think it's a tambuerti, actually. My mistake. Maybe they're using that tree to break it. So, Michael? Yes, I think it could be used to impress a mate in particular. Oh, no! You lost it! Oh, dear! Oh, it blew away. Oh, sorry, starlings. Maybe it was a gift. Maybe the female is now devastated by the loss of her nesting present. Oh, my word. Oh, that's a new sighting for me. Yes, I think it probably was a combination of nesting material and a gift from the male, probably the male to the female. That's usually how it works with the little passerines, so things like starlings, is that the male courts the female. But that was very interesting. That's a new one for my books. Snakeskin makes sense. They've gone off in search of maybe better things. Interesting stuff. Maybe the female just decided she really didn't want it. Definitely no nutritional value in it, though. So it must be nesting. It's the only thing it could be. The only option. Okie dokie. Now I'm going to change my plans since the wild dogs have crossed south. And while I decide which direction I plan on going in, let's pop over to Scott for an update.
Well, that certainly is a first for me, to hear of a bird flying around with a snake skin. Quite interesting, and who knows what exactly it was trying to achieve by displaying that snake skin, flying about with it. Anyway, interesting stuff, and that is the joy of being on a live safari. You simply do not know what is going to happen and when. I've been thinking a little bit more about what I'm looking forward to. A question from Sharon sent through a little bit earlier, and a few more things have come to mind. Firstly, the carmine bee eater, an incredibly pretty bird, which is actually worth stopping for to show you in the book. And like I said, they're incredibly brightly colored, all of the bee eaters actually. And this is one page of bee eaters, which the carmine bee eater is not on. But all of them very, very pretty birds with quite impressive coloration. And then as I page over, you will see the remaining 2 bee eaters that we get here in the Sabi Sands. This here is the one that is still on its way back. I've heard from Jamie that apparently there are some were seen at Nkoro, just to the south of us. Stefan says there are definitely more of them further north in Hoedspruit, so that's where their first points of arrival will be. They come from Central Africa, these birds, and then migrate all the way down to us here. So that's something that I'm looking forward to seeing, one of my favorite birds. And I'm also looking forward to the sweet and tasty fruit of the marula tree. The marula fruits, which are already ripening and dropping to the ground. I haven't eaten one yet this summer. And depending on the tree, they can be very sweet and delicious. You just kind of drink the juice from the fruit. They're not very fleshy, so there's not much to chew on. But you kind of suck on the big pip, within which there's a very tasty nut if you can pry it open. Not easy to do though, unless of course you're a squirrel. They are masters at it. Kirsty says she's had a few and they were quite sour. But then again, just like any fruit tree, each tree will have slightly different flavors. And I have certainly noticed that. Oh, what's going on here? It looks like there's a crested barbet about to deliver some food into a hole. There we go. What is it caught? I can't see what it is. Oh, wow. What is that? I can't tell what it is. Either way, it looks quite tasty. And isn't this an incredible view? Nice close up. It's probably going to pop into its hole at any point in time. At this time of the year, if you do see birds moving around with food, it's almost a sure indicator that they're going to be transporting it back to a nest. What on earth is that? If anyone can see or have an idea what that is, I don't know if it's a scorpion that's had its legs and sting removed. That's a possibility. Where's the bird gone now? I've lost the bird. Looks like it's behind a branch. Or maybe it has disappeared into a cavity higher up in this dead knobthorn tree. Let's move around and see if we can't work out where it is. Really pretty bird, the crested barbet. Oh, no, it's still there. What it may be doing is it may be reluctant to show us the entrance hole to its nest while we are here. Birds can be quite clever like that. You can still see the Birchall starlings also landed in the tree, and I'm wondering if the starling's not going to try and steal this kill. It's very difficult to see, and I'm just trying to work out where it is in relation to where Tibbs is now, which is proving tricky. It looks like it's trying to do more work in finishing off this kill. Tibbs, if you just zoom out, and then I can get my bearings in the tree, and I'll point out exactly where it is. So if you go a bit higher up, just straight up, and then, okay, if you zoom straight in now, slightly to the left, there we go, in that fork at the top, a bit up, there we go. So not the best angle here, but it's doing more work trying to make this kill a bit more edible. I'm kind of certain it was a scorpion now. There was that long tail segment, it looked like, that had the sting removed. Sorry, this is not the best angle, but let's try and reposition and get a better view as to what it's doing. Virtual styling which landed in the tree didn't do what I was hoping it to do. Oh, it's gone, and so is the bird. The kill was eaten and the bird flew off, so we'll carry on. Oh, Tebs has spotted it. But as you can see, no more food, and now he's just taking some time to, sorry, not he, it could be a female. They're hard to distinguish, although the males do tend to have kind of more of that reddish coloration in and around their head and neck. So maybe this is a female. She doesn't have the reddest of heads and necks. Tasty morsel, and I was completely wrong about there being a potential nest, and that was breakfast for her. Good. Okay, so my plan is to now head back to the area where we last had Karula, the female leopard, last night, and see if we can't follow her footprints to wherever she is now. She could be quite some way off from where we left her last night. Kirsty and Nikki seem to think that they saw her in and around FC after they left last night. I'm not convinced it is her. Possibly another leopard, or possibly they were imagining things. They didn't have the most powerful flashlights with them. Kirsty's just whispered in my ear that it was Karula. But either way, we're going to head into that area, and that's the plan, to see if we can't track her down. Interestingly, the reason why I say it could have possibly been another leopard is that Stefan heard Monkey's alarm calling close to Gallagher Camp, which is also close to the final control room, while we were sitting with Karula last night. So we didn't abandon her to go and follow up on those alarm calls, but there could well have been another leopard in the area. TV, Sandra and Michael, thank you for sending through your guesses, caterpillars, beetles, as to what that insect was that the crested barbet was feeding on. I still seem to think it was a scorpion. That long individual segment indicated to me that it could have been a tail, and what birds will do is they'll often just pull off the sting before feeding on scorpions. But could be wrong. It was a tasty morsel, whatever it was. Nice chunky meal to get the crested barbet's day going. So for those of you who weren't on drive yesterday, this is where Karula was seen. She kind of meandered through this area and then cut off to the left here, and we left her lying up about 100 meters to the left of this road. Got a very tricky request through from Julia asking for us to show her a half-collared kingfisher. Now, I've only seen a handful of those in my whole life. They were actually in the Sabi Sands, Julia, at an area called Taylor's Crossing, which is on the boundary between Londolozi and Singita on the Sand River. And very, very pretty. It's the bird on the top left here. And it's more blue than any of the other kingfishers in this area, with no other kind of bright colorations. Also a blackish bill you can see there. And they are aquatic. So unlike the pygmy kingfisher, the grey-headed kingfisher, the woodlands kingfishers, the other kingfishers we get in this area, all pretty birds that actually aren't fishermen, the half-collared kingfisher does need water. And at the moment, Julia, water is one thing we don't have too much of at Djuma. So it would be basically a miracle if a half-collared kingfisher was here. Either that, or it would be very confused as to why it's here. So again, I think if you're going to want to see the half-collared kingfisher, Julia, you're going to have to tell your friends about Safari Live, get more people on board, and we're going to have to go elsewhere in search of one. And not only other birds, but imagine if we started also looking for other mammals in different parts of Africa and even the world. And as much as I do love the Sabi Sands, I'm getting ready for a change of scenery. So your assistance to change our scenery would be most appreciated. In Wisconsin now asks a great question, and he would like to know how many vehicles traverse the area that we get to drive around and how big is our fleet. Dave, our fleet is 3 vehicles strong, and one of which is broken at the moment, so basically we have 2 vehicles, but generally we only head out with 2 vehicles in the morning, and possibly when we've got a bit more of a bigger crew, we'll have a 3rd person out on a bushwalk. So generally kind of 3 feeds are the option with us as Safari Live, but there are other companies or lodges that traverse this area, possibly 2 vehicles from Djuma, 2 camps, one called Galago, one called Vuyatela, so that'll be Aubrey and Texan. That'll be another 2 vehicles out, and then other vehicles from surrounding lodges can also traverse on this property. Vehicles from Cheetah Plain, so one of them's allowed on here, one of the Buffelshoek vehicle, which is privately owned land to the north of us. So we'll typically have a maximum of about 5 vehicles here on Djuma, which is a very small property, only about 600, 700 hectares. But around us, the vehicle density can be higher. When we go across to Arathusa, there can be up to about 10 vehicles on Arathusa at any given time, also on quite a small property, so there's a bit more traffic there, you could say. This morning, the guys are getting out a little bit later than we are, and they probably only started coming out about 15 minutes ago. And so far, I think I heard Texan, I heard Aubrey and Andrew. So there's a few other vehicles out and about. It's kind of catch-22 having the whole vehicle debate and saga. You could have many vehicles driving around, therefore more people looking for animals. The more people that are looking for animals, technically the more animals will be found, which is a good thing, but then the more vehicles that are out, the more pressure there is on any given sighting that is found. So it's a fine balance between having too many vehicles or too few vehicles in a given area. But here at Djuma, we're very, very lucky. We've often got the opportunity to spend very long periods of time with animals, so we don't have a lot of pressure here. On Arathusa, we do get a little bit more pressure to move out of sightings, and that's because there's more vehicles there. wildebeest. And the calves are getting so big. Awesome. Just going to get into position and then we'll switch off and take a closer look at them. They were all being born last time I saw them. And now they are looking a little bit bigger and more competent on their hooves. Wonderful. Hello to Mischian in Dallas, and good to know you're watching, and thanks for the kind welcome back. Mischian's interested to know if I'm more interested in or if I prefer walking safaris or vehicle safaris. And maybe let's take a closer look at the wildebeest while I explain my preferences. Mischian, in an ideal world, what I would do on safari is go for a morning walk and an afternoon drive. That way you're getting the best of both worlds, and I feel it's best to walk in the morning because it's cool and it's also exciting and a good opportunity to follow the trail of predators that may have moved onto your property or more inclined to have moved during the night than during the day. So I prefer to be on foot in the morning. Oh, there's one having breakfast there. You can see suckling away while its mother keeps an eye on us. And I guess there's benefits to being on the vehicle as opposed to on foot. You can get far closer to animals in the vehicle mission. You can watch leopards and lions hunting without interfering, whereas on foot it would be impossible to view those things. Well, not impossible, but unlikely without interfering. Sure, that's really going for it. A little calf. And not easy to get the milk out of those udders. You really have to work for it. Look at its little horns protruding. That's fascinating. Within about a month or so of being live, I mean, its umbilical cord hasn't even broken off properly yet, and already that calf's horns are sticking out. Awesome. Let's get a little bit closer. So yeah, Mischian, a combination of the two. If I had to choose just one thing to do, sure, that would be tricky. But I'd probably go with walking safaris if I had to choose one. Also, photographically, it's far better being on a vehicle. You can rest your camera on the vehicle. You can carry multiple lenses. And again, you can get very close to the animals with very little impact on their behavior. But walking, you're going to have much more of an impact. They're going to be a lot more aware of you, and it's going to be a lot trickier to get close to them and photograph them whilst on foot. You can hear the shrill or the crested barbet calling. I'm not sure where it's situated exactly. And a few fork-tailed drongos, little blackbirds flittering amongst these wildebeest, catching little insects that are chased up by the wildebeest's passing hooves. Now, I'm not too sure how many wildebeest calves are actually here, but let's maybe do a quick head count. There's 4 over there. There's another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so that's 9 over there. And one off, hidden behind these bushes over here. So I think that's all of them. And Kirsty's just confirmed with me that last time there were 10, so we know that Karula hasn't sniped one of them or any other predators, so that's good news for the wildebeest. Shame a few weeks back there was, I think, a different herd of wildebeest. It must have been a different herd, and I think they had given birth to about 3 or 4 young calves, and one night 2 Styx lioness, I think it was, came through and caught and killed, I think, all 3 or 4 of those calves. Brent was out that morning and he tracked the lions from kill to kill, and That was a sad morning. But these wildebeest are doing a lot better, as are the pack of wild dogs, the Investec pack that some of you were lucky enough to see with Jamie last night. 3 adults miraculously still successfully keeping 11 pups alive. And in my history with wild dogs in this area, the mortality rates of pups is very high. So good that the wildebeest and the wild dog are both doing well. Oh, awesome. There's a tiny little bird down here, Tibbs, just to the left of this white thorny bush, just over there. Oh, awesome. Look at its turquoise mascara. I've never been close enough to show you this. And this is a little bee eater. Oh, off it goes. How awesome was that? It's just over there, I think, Tibbs. Or am I dreaming? No, you're on it there. Awesome stuff. So this is the cousin of the carmine bee eater that I spoke of earlier, that hasn't arrived back from migration. The little bee eaters that we're looking at now don't migrate, so they're here throughout the year. It's just that they're so small we seldom actually get to see them. And what it's doing is it's basically perching itself on a hunting platform, and then it waits for a little bug to fly past, and that's why it flits off and then lands not too far away. So it's busy hunting for breakfast. And they're often in small little flocks, so there could be another 2 or 3 in this general area. They seldom alone. So I'm quite surprised that we haven't spotted another one yet. Look at it looking for bugs. That's so cool. It really kind of tilted its head up there. Incredibly quick birds. And it's back at the base of that thorn bush now, Tibbs. Oh! What it likes to actually often do, and now it's gone back to the same perch where it was a little bit earlier, slightly to your left there, Tibbs. And now back to the thorn tree. So what this is telling us is that they have kind of set hunting platforms that they like to work off, and they just flits between the two. Useful to know for photography. If you were trying to photograph this bird, you can kind of just wait on one of its perches, and it in all likelihood will at some point come back, and then you could get a flying shot. Oh, remarkable. I think you got a good idea of how quick it is. It's also catching tiny little insects, ones that we can't even see once it lands and feeds on them. Putting on a proper aerial display for us here. And now I've just seen another one. Another one's just arrived, so it's not a loner. I'm not sure where the other one's just flown off to, but it did do a quick flyby. The robotic call that you can hear is a few fork-tailed drongos having a morning debate. Other than that, can't see here much. Let's take a quick look. There's another wildebeest calf having some breakfast straight in front of us, and I think we're going to be able to get some great views of it. It's had to go down onto its knees, testament to how quickly they're growing, because just a few weeks ago they could feed quite easily without having to bend down as it is now. You can even see the milk on the moustache of that little wildebeest calf. Crazy. Look at that. Is it? Yeah. A foamy, frothy cappuccino breakfast. And it's doing a good job trying to at least lick its lips clean of that tasty milk. Okay. Now I fear that I've left the car off for too long. No, I haven't. The frequency that the vehicle sends the picture out to you guys with interferes with the immobilizer remote on this vehicle. A lot of you will be asking, why do we need an immobilizer remote out here? We don't, they're just difficult to disconnect. And that's just about all I know on that topic. Anyway, if we leave the vehicle off for too long, then when we try and click the immobilizer while the signal is being sent to you, it interferes with the immobilizer, so it cannot start the car. Haven't quite got to grips with that yet. Okay, little ganoos, thank you for having us. We are heading off in search of a predator. Wow, Pippa, hello. For those of you who don't know, Pippa is one of the owner of Juma, and she has kindly corrected my terrible quote on the size of Juma, and I told you it was half the size that it actually is. I said it was 600 hectares, but it's actually 1,242 to be precise hectares. Thanks, Pippa, and happy birthday for the other day. Interesting question from Debbie now, and she would like to know if any of us have ever done any game drives for guests. No, not up till this point, but there is talk of us starting to do something like that, Debbie, so watch this space. We may start doing something where we will be taking out the Safari Live viewers or any guests on drives, but for now all we do is take you guys on drive. Not in the flesh though, but it is something that may change in the future. But those plans are still being finalized and fine-tuned. At this point, we don't even have enough presenters on the ground to cater for these live safaris. So we need to ramp up our team, and I think that is the plan. There's going to be a lot of changes this year, but we are still just waiting on a few finer details before any major plans come into play, but I can assure you there's some exciting prospects on the cards. Come on, Karula, where did you go last night? I was hoping we would have found some of her tracks by now, but it's not an easy business. Also in this flat overcast light, it's difficult conditions for tracking because you're not getting the shadows cast from the low angle of the sun. So ideally, tracking will be done early in the morning when the sun's shining from the side, or in the late afternoon again when it's shining from the side. And that way it casts shadows on the toe prints and pad marks, making it easier to see where the animals have been. Yet when the sun is directly above you, or if it's overcast, you lack those shadows, which make it really tricky. But we're going to do one more loop back around kind of the camp area, around the lodge area. She does move in and around the camp quite freely, and there's no concern of us, and that's really wonderful to see wild animals moving in and amongst humans without actually being too concerned with us. Jimmo would like to know why he or she hasn't seen any leopards up trees on Juma and would like to know why. Obviously, you haven't been following Safari Live for long enough. That is the simple answer. They do climb trees, and you will get to see one up a tree. But you're just going to have to be a little bit patient. The reason why they don't spend all day up a tree is because, or all the time up trees, is because it's not comfortable up there, primarily. And obviously they need to move around, so the likely times to see leopards up trees are when they are feeding on a kill that they've hoisted into the tree. Once they've finished feeding, they'll often come down and lie at the base of the tree. Again, it's simply more comfortable lying on the ground than lying in a tree, as a general rule. In summer, that can change ever so slightly because it's very hot, and often there's a blanket of thick green grass on the ground, not at the moment during the drought, but usually in summer, a leopard would be inclined to go up a tree to get the cool breeze, be out of the blanketing grass, and also lie in the cool shade of the canopy of the tree. So marula trees are the trees that we see them in most often here. And occasionally in summer, during the heat of the day, they'll go up there where the discomfort of lying on a big log outweighs the discomforts of lying in a very thick blanketed grass. They'll also climb up trees to escape other predators like lion or hyena, but they are definitely more often than not on the ground, and they'll simply go up trees in those reasons that I've just explained, or in those scenarios that I've just explained. But don't worry, keep watching, and it's a beautiful thing to see a leopard up a tree. And it will happen at some time. I know one of the new viewers who's just joined about a week ago hasn't seen any lion yet. And it's quite nice that you still do have things to tick off your lists. Monkey Man in Australia, hello, and good to have you with us. You are asking whether a leopard would possibly hunt a giraffe calf if it had the opportunity, and yes, it has been documented fairly often actually, only with male leopards that I've heard of. I've never heard of a female leopard killing a giraffe calf. That's not to say it hasn't happened, but male leopards, one of which we have seen here, the Anderson male, he fairly recently, a few months ago, caught a baby giraffe and actually managed to hoist it up into a tree. So it does happen, an incredible accomplishment for a leopard, because a giraffe calf is born weighing probably close to in and around what a big male leopard weighs, just under about 100 kilograms and about 2 meters in height, almost at birth. So it's a very large prey item for a smaller predator like a leopard. And not only catching and killing that large prey, but then being able to hoist it up into a tree is remarkable. We've just missed an elephant taking a drink here. Or a couple of elephants actually. There's a small little pond that the Galago camp looks out onto. I'm just trying to plan my attack here as to where to go. The Ellie's on some thick bush here. I'll just stop to let Teb show you a glimpse of them moving off before we try and work out what to do next. So let's reposition and try and get ahead of them. It's very thick, the bush that they're moving through, but if we're patient, I'm sure they'll pop out into an area where we can get a better view. Jamie is also in this general area. She's going to be heading across to the hyena den to check up on the 2 new additions. Yesterday morning, 2 new tiny hyena cubs were seen for the first time, I believe. So she's heading back there to check up on that. And I'm told there's now, I think, 5 different cubs in the hyena den. So a lot going on with the hyena clan. There's also been quite a lot of violence with the hyenas. We were chatting about that earlier. A couple of months back, I caught the tail end of a fight where one hyena had been very, very badly injured. Its back 2 feet had been chewed into a pulp. Its ears gnawed quite badly. One looked like it was about to fall off. And sadly, that hyena hasn't been seen again since that day. Could still be okay. There's been some remarkable success stories with hyenas recovering from fights of a similar nature. Well, the good news is we have managed to loop ahead of these Ellies, and we're about to get some great views of them. Just going to stop here. The elephant's just in the bush over here kind of stopped, and she held her head up, indicating that she wasn't entirely happy with our presence. But now she's calmed down again, and the fact that she is feeding again is a good sign for us. And she obviously just wanted to say, don't come any closer just yet. And we'll just sit patiently here waiting for her to pop into a gap. I'm not too sure how many there are in this herd. I think I've seen about 3 so far. Watch how she's using her trunk to smell the road very, very carefully. Not only the road, but she's also possibly looking for some tasty morsels along the way, possibly also analyzing our scent. But an incredible tool, that. And one that takes elephants many, many years to get to grips with. It's not an easy piece of equipment to handle the trunk, and it often makes young elephants quite amusing to watch as they try and learn how to get to grips with that complicated muscle. And sacrosanct on YouTube, you are dead on. Those tusks are very, very wide apart, and all elephants will have slightly different tusks, shapes and sizes, as do we all have slightly different dentition. Oh, it looks like we've caught up to the rest of the herd. There's more than I thought, and there's a few youngsters in amongst them, so this is going to be good. Just want to try and get into spots where we can see the smallest of the young calves. There we go. It's chasing off after its mother. You can see it in there though. We're gonna race you across to another little cute and new addition to Juma.
That is such a tiny cub. Just a quick trip to the den to give us an update. There we go, here comes number 2. And look who's decided to pop out and say hello. Oh my goodness. That is so tiny. That cannot be more than 2 weeks old. Hello, little ones. Welcome to the world. It must seem very big and scary. Big matriarch giving them a wash. Oh, disappearing again. Come on, little ones. Now at this stage, these brief glimpses, oh, look how wobbly they are. These brief glimpses are an absolute treat. We just have to get lucky in terms of timing. Oopsie daisy. Those back legs not terribly secure. Struggling their way out of the den. And that is so tiny. Hello, you two. And proud mom standing over them. Looking, it must be said, very well fed. She's got a nice round belly. She's obviously had a meal last night and returned to her tiny, tiny babies this morning. Tiny bundles of black fluff. I'm not sure how old these cubs are. My guess would be under 2 weeks old, maybe just at the 2-week mark. Only now becoming brave enough to pop out. We've said that she is the matriarch in this clan. We keep referring to, or I keep referring to in my head, as the baby boomers, because they've just supplemented their numbers in the last 3 months by 5 new little cubs. And Safari Dean, you're wondering how big a hyena clan can get and how many clans there are on Djuma, or how, and I suppose an extension of that, how big is this clan? Now, it depends on the area that you're in. So it's very much, for hyenas, it's very much dependent on whether, for example, they're in a arid area like a desert area, or possibly in the open grasslands of Eastern Africa. What is she? Oh, there's some impala behind us, there's a herd of impala. That's what she's looked up at. But her cubs have... There we go. Thanks, Brian. There you go. You can see the impala moving about in the background there. Sorry, Safari Dean, I'll get to your question now. Unlikely to really disturb them, but she's just very alert with those tiny cubs now starting to wander about. So clans have been recorded up to 50 hyena. That's some of the biggest clans you will see, and generally out here, that's a little bit big for this kind of area. So I would say we're probably averaging in this area about 20 or so in a clan. And this clan itself, I would say, I'm still trying to keep track of numbers. There's at least 6 adult females, mature. Hello, little one. June watching on. Shame. Poor little thing. Still no sign of June's mom. Sleeping patiently at the den. Here come the little ones out again. Their first exploration of this world. So we know of at least 6 adult females. I would say this clan probably extends to about 20 in number itself. It's quite a big clan now, particularly with the new additions. So there'll be a lot of sub-adults that are moving around without us seeing them all the time. And there'll also be a couple of males that are either natal males or clan males that move through here. And they stay generally off on their own, but will reunite if there's some kind of threat to the clan. For example, if they're trying to push lions off a kill, or even trying to compete with a neighboring clan. So at the moment, their core territory is Djuma, clearly. Their den sites have all been on Djuma, but their territorial range does extend up into Buffelshoek, as far as we know. Their boundary, in my... so cute. My guesswork, and from what I've observed, seems to be the Triple M boundary. There's a very big clan on Simbambili and Arathusa that is not part of this clan. Sorry guys, just listening to the Game Drive channel. Such a nice, quick update at the den. I'm not going to stay too much longer. I just wanted to pop in and see what was happening, particularly because Kevin Catfish had sent through that update that he thought he heard another hyena fight on the Juma Dam camera last night. I just wanted to see what was happening. Okay, well, nice quick view of the cubs. I'm going to head out and find different things, but Scott is still with his Ellies, so let's head over there.
Welcome back, everyone. And aren't we getting spoiled all of a sudden with the influx of big mammals on screen? And those cute little hyena cubs sound like great fun. Sadly, these elephants have just moved past us into some thick bush, so I'm going to try and reposition again. And while we do so, I would suggest probably sending you guys back to the hyenas, because we're not going to get any good views of these elephants for the time being.
And while Scott repositions Rusty, we haven't actually changed position as to where we are. We hadn't even managed to get the car started yet to make our way out. Now we'll do a question or a quick answer to a question as to whether or not we've named the cubs. I haven't. I'm always a bit hesitant about naming cubs myself, just because those first few weeks of life, the survival sort of is so tentative. Now this clan's doing incredibly well with their cubs. I'll leave it up to all of you. As I said, we've got to be careful about naming them after the months that they're born in, just because we're going to get to June at some point and run into difficulties. We could always throw the end of the year onto the end of the name. It's up to you guys. I quite like to watch and observe their characters start to come through. Michael, it's a little bit too soon to say whether one cub will... No, actually, sorry, let me rephrase that. I actually think it's a little bit late for one cub to have killed the other to establish dominance. So that kind of serious interaction that Michael's talking about, the siblicide that happens between hyena cubs, it's usually when there's two females. And as far as I understand it and the way that it all works, and of course I've never seen it in practice, and the reason behind that is because it happens really early on, from what I understand. So almost from birth, they're born with teeth, and they're born with quite already serious levels of testosterone if they are females. It's not as common as previously thought, but Michael, I actually think it's a little bit late. I think if that had happened, it would have happened by now already. That's my understanding of the way that siblicide plays out, but I'm still struggling with the whole concept and trying to establish exactly how it plays out in reality. It's a combination, apparently, of direct aggression, so direct biting and physical contact, and then also pushing the other cub away to prevent it from feeding. Alrighty, well, I'm going to leave our hyenas. This time I'm actually going to leave our hyenas. Send you back across to Scott, who is with his Ellies.
So we're just trying to make the most of this elephant sighting. That's why we're racing you back from side to side here, because it is thick bush here and the elephants are moving quite quickly. So I think this is probably going to be our last good opportunity to get a view of them. And we're in luck because the smallest of all the calves is just in there. And the elephants do appear to be feeding slowly towards us. So I think we are going to get one last great view of them as they pass by. hello to Ginny, who's noticed that some elephants appear to be considerably more wrinkled than others. And that's a good observation, Ginny. The reason for it I cannot tell you. I guess it's just simple genetic variation, just like us as humans have got different traits and different looks. So do the wild animals. And I don't think it can be attributed to age, because some very young elephants appear very wrinkly, as do some old ones. So I don't have a particular theory as to what causes it. I'm not sure if any other people may have any ideas as to what may cause them to be more wrinkly. Tibbs, maybe let's just focus in on the road here and we'll be able to watch this calf following its mother as she crosses. Cute. Let's see. I was hoping it was going to try and use its trunk there. It's far too young to have absolute control over it, but not this time. The rest of the herd are going to pass by a lot closer by, so this should be great. Hello to Jody, who's watching in California, who has just admitted that he is now addicted to Safari Live, and that's wonderful to hear. And good to have you with us. It really is quite an experience. I know a lot of people that watch it for the first time are surprised at how addicted they do become to the experience. There's one of our viewers, Brian, in Philadelphia, who discovered the Safari Live experience in November 2014 during Big Cat Week back then, and within 6 months he had already booked his first safari and came out and visited at Arathusa, where we met him. And just a warning, Jody, you too could be here in the flesh in just a few months. This is a far better display of how well a trunk can be used by this big female. Very accurately plucking out the pieces of grass that she desired there. Question through from Jeffrey in Texas, who's now asking, why are baby elephants so hunchbacked? And let's see if this one doesn't give us any attitude. Come on, show us who's boss. Was thinking about it, but didn't really want to commit. Sometimes they'll come charging up to the vehicle with their ears out. It looks like the one on the left now, slightly older, maybe slightly more bold. No, but displaying all the behavioral signs that a large elephant would if it was unhappy with our presence. So good to note that behavior. Jeffrey, you haven't noticed that young elephants are hunchbacked, so I'm going to have to take a closer look. I'm not sure if any of you also agree with Jeffrey. I simply don't recall them being very hunchbacked, and therefore I cannot answer your question any further. May have something to do with the fact that they have been curled up in their mother's stomach for close to 22 months. A very long gestation period. But to me, they don't look hugely different to teenage or adult elephants. And it appears like that is that. The herd has moved through and passed by. Let's see if we can't move back and get you any more views, but I'm not sure if we are going to be able to. One more big female behind us in the road. I don't want to put too much pressure on her as we reverse. Is going to be as good as it gets to get a few final glimpses of them. That looks like the youngster that had its ears out and tail up as it crossed the road. Looking a lot more normal now. Hello to Blade, who's watching on YouTube, and Blade would like to know the kind of average length of tusks of elephants, and I would say about 12 inches to 20 inches would be your kind of average length of an elephant's tusk in this area. But it's important to understand, Blade, that occasionally you get some massive big tuskers whose tusks can be 6 feet long. They can touch the ground, and big elephant bulls will actually use them as pillows and just rest their head directly down on their tusks, which are literally scraping the ground. And that was also a cause of them to break, that they simply get too long and eventually get in the way of the elephants and are snapped off. So they can get very, very big and long, but in general they're not too long, a foot or two. I think sadly the ivory trade many years ago, which resulted in, oh, here's a surprise, there's one more straggler at the back that we'll get to watch crossing the road in front of us, probably a young bull, although it might actually be a cow. As I was saying there, sadly the ivory trade definitely took its toll on the good genes. It is a young bull, just to confirm this guy. So because a lot of elephants were persecuted for their ivory, obviously the biggest and the most beautiful specimens were the ones that were shot out, and they were shot out in their hundreds and thousands simply for their ivory, and that has caused a decline in good genes. But there are still a few tuskers roaming around the Kruger National Park there. For some reason, we don't get to see big elephant bulls in the Sabi Sands very often, and I'm not too sure why. But they are out and about, and occasionally we could get lucky enough to see them. Well, would you believe it? Brian in Philadelphia, who I was just talking about, is busy watching. And he's the guy who was here in less than 6 months after discovering the show, just to remind you. And Brian's fascinated as to how quietly elephants can move through the bush. And you're right, Brian, it is remarkable. I think they do very accurately place their feet down on areas that are unobstructed by branches and twigs where they can. And often, with a lot of the four-legged animals, their front feet will very often register in the same spot that, or their back feet rather, will register in the same spot that their front feet have stood in. And that obviously decreases the amount of noise they make, but even still, it's remarkable that such large animals can be just so silent. Well, Jamie's just got to find one of her kind of case studies that she's been following up on over the last few days, and I don't want to get you guys to miss out on any action there. So over to her, and we'll catch up shortly.
We've just run into our group of kudu that we've been following over the last few days. Definitely 3 very pregnant females here. They're playing hard to get though. They're playing shy. I think this is the one with the identifying stripe pattern on her bottom. I say it's our group of kudu. I'm fairly certain it is, because they've also got a young, tiny little male with them. He's only just starting to get his horns. Something's captured her attention. But for new viewers or viewers who might have missed out on the last few weeks' worth of shows, we've been following this herd of kudu because there are 3 females that are almost at bursting point, and at least one of them that, when I last saw her, looked as though she was about to start lactating. Her baby births are imminent. Here she's going to come out nicely for us. Here we go. Hello, big girl. Hi. They're nice, luckily nice and relaxed with us, so running to catch up with the rest of the group. They're far more relaxed than the other kudu that I've spotted around here. There's no sign of any youngsters yet. The day will come though. I'm fairly certain that these ladies are about to pop. I'll give them one more moment to just start moving off a little bit before I go forward. It disappeared straight into a monkey orange thicket. And very distantly in the background, let me see if I can hear it again for you. There's a frog calling. It's amazing how even the smallest bit of rain brings out both the insects and the frogs, and it's a foam nest frog that is calling. Oh. Wandering into the drainage line. You can also hear some oxpeckers calling. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some buffalo around the corner. Can you hear them buzzing away? Try and get you one last view. Oh, I think they're actually going to do that for us. Come on, girls. You're going to be obliging. There goes the little male that I was talking about with the tiny little horns, just starting to come through. And he's also quite a useful identifying individual. Awesome. Well, nice to update ourselves as to the progress of the pregnancies, which also, as it happens, is quite nice alliteration. But our kudu are not playing easy to see this morning. So let's head back to Scott and his elephants.
Well, we've been very fortunate in that this herd of elephants appear to be now moving parallel to Galago Shortcut, the road that we are currently on. And my concerns for not being able to stay with them have now been proved wrong. I'm just going to roll forward ever so slightly here, see if we can't get a little gap to watch this calf. There we go. And who knows when those kudu will give birth. But exciting stuff, and well done to Jamie for following that so closely. Well, I didn't catch the middle of your name, but it's the real somebody, Bill, I think. Oh, the real darty bull. Good to know we've got another new viewer. And you'd like to know if I've ever been sprayed by an elephant, and you specifically termed or used water, being sprayed by water. I haven't been sprayed by water, I've been sprayed by dust, as they are dust bathing, but never yet by water, sadly. But who knows, maybe that'll happen once we get a little bit more rain. It certainly is possible. It's happened to colleagues of mine in the past. But I cannot say that I've been lucky enough to have an elephant shower just yet. Oh, we've just got a very interesting question through from Paul. Now, Paul has heard that an elephant will... Okay, settle down. An elephant will never cross a ditch that its trunk cannot reach the bottom of. And I would tend to disagree with that, Paul. If I think logically, if there was a very narrow ditch... Oh, look at the calf coming across, head up, tail out. Obviously got a little bit too far away from mum and started panicking. But Paul, if there was a very narrow gap that an elephant needed to stand over, I've never actually seen elephants testing the depth of any kind of gap that they have needed to move across. So I'm not sure who told you that or where you found out about that, but it doesn't seem to make sense to me at the outset. Like I say, you could have a very narrow gap of maybe 6 inches that could be kilometers deep, but an elephant's not going to be concerned about stepping over it. So I think we can dispel that myth or theory. We're going to have to wait here. This cow's getting a little bit worked up with us. Look at her sniffing us intently there, aiming her trunk directly at us. What's wrong? We've been following you for long now. We haven't caused any trouble. You just carry on looking for food. Now, as we watch some interesting body language from this elephant, Nature Watch is interested to understand if they can communicate by stomping their feet on the ground. And no, not as far as I'm aware, Nature Watcher, but they can communicate infrasonically with vibrations that are inaudible to the human ear, that travel through the earth and are absorbed through the feet of elephants up into their body and then processed as messages. So those vibrations can travel for many, many miles through the ground. And that's why sometimes while we are watching elephants, they'll all of a sudden stop and even rest their trunk on the ground, have all 4 feet firmly planted on the ground, not be moving. And the whole herd will do it simultaneously to receive these infrasonic vibrations. But I've never seen or heard of them communicating by stomping their feet down. Now, a lot of you would have noticed that while we've been watching these elephants, they have been on the move, but they've also been feeding as they go. And Kim B would like to know, how much time will elephants spend feeding during a day? Well, they'll spend about 16 hours a day on the move / feeding. They usually sleep around 8 hours during a 24-hour period. Just going to see if we can get Tebs into a slightly better position here. So about 16 hours a day they'll be awake, and when they're awake they're basically constantly feeding, and they need to acquire very, very large amounts of vegetable matter every day. Can be about 4% of their body weight, which amounts to a massive amount of food daily. For a big 6-ton elephant bull, it could be as much as 250 to 300 kilograms, which you basically double to get pounds, so about 500 to 600 pounds, even slightly more than that. And in order to acquire that much food, they need to focus heavily on feeding. And that's what we can see them doing now. Constantly just keeping their bellies full. The reason for it, Kim, is they've got a very poor digestive system, so they don't receive huge amounts of nutrients from the plants that they eat. Unlike the ruminants, the animals with 4-chambered stomach that will chew the cud, so they'll re-chew on already swallowed and chewed on food to even more finely break it down and make it easier to absorb minerals and nutrients in their digestive tracts. The elephants are not like that, and the food passes through just about the way it went in. Hello to Kathy, who's watching all the way in Memphis, and happy to hear that you enjoyed the views we got of those cute little calves a bit earlier. They are one of my favorite animals to watch, young elephants. Kathy would also like to know if these elephants within a herd are probably all related, and yes, they are all distantly related. How it works is that there'll be a female who's in charge of the herd, so it's a matriarchal society where the females make the decisions in the herds. The men only come and go when there's opportunities to mate, so they don't have a huge role, any role really, in the upbringing of calves. And how it will work is that young elephants will stay with their mothers until they're about 10 to 15 years of age, and then the bulls, the young males, will tend to move off and join bachelor groups, whereas the females will stay within their herd. So they'll get to know their cousins and other offspring within the herd very well, and it'll tend to keep a kind of family line going within a herd. There'll be many different females that will probably stay in the same herd as their mother. And they can give birth around every 3 to 4 years, elephants. So over a lifespan of about 60 years on average, they can give birth to quite a few calves, and those can all stay within the herd if they are female. If they are male, they will move off though. Just going to reposition again, and while we do so, I can answer a question from Maggie M, who's interested to know if we found a piece of ivory, a broken tusk in the field, would we be allowed to keep it? And technically, I don't think we would, Maggie. I've never come across elephant tusks before. I found warthog tusks and hippo's teeth, but never the tusk of an elephant. But it would probably be wise not to hold on to it, because the ivory trade is illegal, and unless you're an owner of land like this, you wouldn't have a justifiable reason to have the ivory. And that's technically what happens with skulls and ivory that are found. I know Dave in Wisconsin was interested to know what happens with all of the skulls and bits and pieces that are found that people may like to hold on to, and they typically get kept to show people, put in the lodge area so that people get to see the massive skulls of elephants, or used in museums. But that's the prerogative of the person who owns the land wherever that skull is found. Oh, well, the sun is poking through, and immediately I can feel the sweat building on my forehead within just a few seconds of it beaming down on us. And we've been fortunate so far this morning to not have any sunshine, because it gets incredibly hot as soon as it does come out. What's interesting here is this herd is fragmented into two pieces. Earlier I heard some trumpeting coming far from the left, and that's where the majority of the herd appear to have headed off to, whereas half of it is over here. And that's not uncommon for herds to split up and regroup. Kind of slowing down their pace though a little bit, and you'll probably find that they'll continue to do so until kind of mid-morning, until probably between 10 and 2 p.m. They'll take a bit of a 4-hour midday siesta under a tree in the shade, and then they'll probably get about another 4 hours of sleep at some time during the night. So I've noticed that elephants often split their sleep periods up into different chunks, unlike us who get our 8 hours roughly of sleep only at night. Well, I lie, actually. We're almost on a similar wavelength to them at the moment, because we are waking up so early in the morning. We try to get in a midday snooze, so we're splitting up our sleep portions in a similar fashion to the elephants. And it certainly is going to take a bit of getting used to waking up at 3:45 in the morning after being on leave for 2.5 weeks, waking up leisurely whenever you decide to. In British Columbia is interested to know a little bit more about the eyesight of elephants and whether they are colorblind. And apparently, Chris, they can see in shades of red and green and don't have the best eyesight. It's quite easy to sneak up to elephants, provided the wind is in your favor. Not quite as easy as rhinos, so their eyes are definitely better than rhinos. But, oh, there goes a tree. That was lucky. Pushed it down just into a little gap just before we got moving. And at this time of the year, it's not uncommon for this to happen. Now what she's going to do is, this is perfect. She's going to try and feed on the leaves of this tree that were obviously very difficult for her to reach while the tree was standing up. Hence her decision to capsize it. And it's a very necessary form of destruction that we see these elephants performing. A lot of people kind of cringe at the sight every time an elephant breaks down a tree, but it's all part of Mother Nature's process to make sure that this area doesn't become too thick and uninhabitable for other animals that need to live here. And that tree that's just been pushed down will form a nursery where small trees can grow unaffected by other animals that will battle to access them. So it's all part of a plan. There's a knob thorn acacia that she pushed down, and you can see all of the knobs on that tree, hence the name, as well as all of the other trees in the foreground. It's quite an interesting thing though, not all knob thorn acacias will be as knobbly as the ones we can see here. These are prime specimens. Sometimes the knobs are very difficult to actually see, or there aren't many of them. Hello to Anna, who's interested to know what will happen to elephants once they lose their 6th and final set of molars. They've got 6 sets of molars that they will be able to utilize throughout the course of their life, and 2 sets of tusks. The initial set of tusks falls out when they're very, very small, called milk tusks. The second set will grow throughout the life of the elephant, and their molars will eventually run out. Now, depending on the area that the elephant lives in and the diet that it feeds on, obviously if it's feeding on a lot of bark and more hard vegetation, the teeth will wear down faster than elephants who are lucky enough to feed on kind of fresh green grass, which is their ideal meal if they could choose, the easiest to feed on. But yes, they will actually starve to death, and that is one of the main kind of killers of elephant, you could say. It's the fact that their teeth wear down and then they lose condition, and then they either become sick or die of actual starvation. Few predators are big enough to kill elephants, so it's basically their own expiry date that causes them to pass away a lot of the time. Having said that though, again, it's not like we very often see very thin and emaciated elephants that are slowly starving to death, so we don't want it to sound too dramatic, but again, probably what happens is when they do lose condition, they are more prone to sickness and disease, and that's what probably speeds up their final few months or years. Not necessarily that they starve to death not being able to chew on anything. Okay, I think we're going to need to reposition again. Hello, Barbara, and Barbara's interested to know how old I think this elephant is. We're going to have to get a little bit closer, and let's stop and we'll analyze exactly how old she could be. She doesn't at the outset though look very old, Barbara. I'm guessing she's kind of midway through her life, maybe at around 30 or 40 years old. Just wait for it to come out into a little gap here. Things to look for, Barbara, when aging in elephants are obviously just the general impression you get from them, but on their forehead they've got temporal dents. So just above her eye you'll notice this kind of slightly kind of concave dent there. It's not too pronounced. And on an elephant that's old, that will become very pronounced. There's also another one there's 2 dents almost, one close to her ear hole, to the right of her eye, and then one directly above her eye. Slightly kind of different dents, you could say. And the deeper those become, the older the elephant tends to be. The tricky thing with aging animals though, Barbara, is that I've never grown up with an elephant and watched its kind of progression as it ages, and because they live for such long periods of time and move through such big areas, we battle to keep track of any individuals. And I've only once ever been told a confirmed age of an elephant. It was of a young bull who was 20 years old, and that is the only confirmed elephant's age that I've actually been able to see and get a grip of. And even then, that can be misleading, because you, just like us as humans, you get humans who may all be the same age, but may look to be slightly older or younger, and it's the same with the wild animals. But if I had to hazard a guess, I would put her at maybe 30 or 40, somewhere in and around there. Well, I just want to creep forward and see if we can't get you a glimpse of some beautiful kudu bulls that I've just spotted there. Through here, that should work actually. And who knows, maybe these bulls were responsible a few months ago. Oh, there goes another one in the background, for helping make those female kudu you saw earlier pregnant. No guarantees though, but that does look like to be a bull in his prime. His horns are quite close together, so he's got quite a narrow spread. There's another individual who's been nicknamed Zeus, who's got an incredibly wide rack of horns. And I wonder where he is. Haven't seen him for quite some time actually, but I hope he's still around. Good. We're going to continue and see what else is going on. And I still want to snoop around a little bit and see if we can't find any tracks of Karula, to get a better idea of where she is hiding out, so that we've got something to work on for this afternoon. And while we do that, we are going to send you across to Janie for an update on what she's been up to.
While Scott bumbles around looking for Karula, that's actually sort of what Brian and myself have been doing. I always find it difficult to predict where she's going to end up. It's worth just checking as much or covering as much of the area as possible. And just to finish off something interesting from our bird sighting that we had at the very start of Drive. So if you missed it, it was a starling carrying quite a long snakeskin. It was a first for me, and we discussed how probably it's being used for nesting material. Brian actually raised a really good point though, that a snakeskin in its own way could maybe be a deterrent for other snakes to stop from entering a nest site. I mean, I don't know, it sounds entirely plausible to me. Evidence that maybe there's a bigger, badder snake out there. Ooh, competition's on. Since we found that snakeskin, Cheesy Cheetah says that whichever guide happens to find a real snake for you will then win your position as the favorite presenter. Oh, Brian, pressure's on. Our first drive back that Brian and myself did, Brian's first afternoon, we had mating rhombic egg eaters sitting in a acacia tree. So Brian, do you think we can repeat that?
Yeah, why not?
No, why not? Steph had a python on drive. I'm now going to drive in first gear very slowly and check for snakes. I might miss everything else, but let's see if we can find a snake. And actually this is perfect weather for them to start coming out. So we had that chilly start of the morning. The sun's just sort of now poked its way above the clouds. And as a consequence, I wouldn't be surprised if there is a couple of snakes that have decided to come out into the open to bask and to warm up after a chilly evening. I really am now completely distracted, checking every twig and stick. And generally the wonderful thing about snakes is that they find you, or not they find you, but they just sort of emerge all of a sudden. We have a couple of them that occasionally make their way into camp, and I happen to love snakes. I don't find them scary in any way. I find them absolutely fascinating. I always have, even as a child. So we've had python on camera, red-lipped herald. We've had an awesome boomslang sighting at Bushwalk. And Cheesy Cheetah, if we don't manage to find one today, then I think you need to just keep watching, because especially on bushwalk is one of your best chances of actually seeing a snake. I believe even a black mamba has made a cameo appearance on our live safaris. That was Scott with VM, so Brian, we need to up our game maybe, although I still think our rhombic egg eaters were fascinating in their own right, wrapped around each other and in the tree. Beautiful snakes, incredible patterns. It's amazing how your brain then switches and starts looking for snakes. So if I drive past a leopard, you'll just have to let me know. Of course, South Africa is famed for having some of the most dangerous snakes. We definitely have a couple of incredibly venomous species. So top of that list, as always, goes to the black mamba. It's generally quite an aggressive snake. That being said, they have an exceptionally undeserved reputation. They're not going to chase you, as certain rumors might lead you to believe. They're never going to chase you. They're always more frightened of you than you are of them. Making the trees. Best way to find a snake is to actually follow the alarm calls of birds or squirrels. We were searching for one of our most endangered predators this morning before the wild dogs decided to hot-foot it out of here. And Clancy in Ohio, you were wondering, besides from the endangered animals that we have out here, we do have several species of them, you were wondering if there's any endangered trees. And yes, actually, there's quite a few. And as we make our way towards the drainage line, I'll have a look for you and I'll show you some of our endangered species. One of the most famous and the most protected is, of course, the leadwood. Because as you can imagine, a solid wood that is almost completely termite resistant. Oh boy, I'm going to stick around. Sorry, Clancy, I'll get back to your question in a moment. I just want to, I wouldn't say sneak up on this waterbuck, but just find a stopping point. Okay, boy, you need to be shy. You often see these waterbuck bulls around this area. Camera shy. You can see how bulky and powerful he is. He's actually got a couple of scratches and scars along his shoulder. I wouldn't be surprised if those were from tussles with other big waterbuck bulls. He's just reaching full maturity. His horns are starting to spread outwards. The tips are of immature bulls face inwards a little bit. These are just starting to grow out. He's big though. I mean, he's a really solid. That antelope is probably, I don't know, close to 300 kilograms. No, probably a little bit less. That puts it at about 600 pounds. Probably bulkier than the male kudu that you saw with Scott. There he goes, squeezing his way under a tree, having to tilt his horns back, just like those kudu did with Scott, or would have had to do with Scott if they were moving through thick vegetation. Again, thick vegetation habitats, and for waterbuck riverine vegetation, almost inevitably, the females do not have horns, just like all of the antelope species that tend to prefer these thick, dense habitats, because they're actually a little bit of a disadvantage. Okay, well, there's a protected tree species straight in front of us. Back to Clancy's question. So the big green tree for Clancy, that is a torchwood or a balanites tree. The reason it's called torchwood is because its seeds contain a high content of inflammable oils. That's not the best example of The favorite of all of ours, of course, is the big Balanites on the Balanites Road junction. The Balanites is the Latin name for the greenthorn family. I have to find you a nice big one, Clancy, to really give you a proper impression. And even these beautiful marula trees, like the one that I'm sitting under at the moment, even marula trees are a protected species out here. So the big tree species like this have been protected in terms of using them for firewood or building material. Marula is not the best building material. It is a protected species, so it's illegal to go and cut it down. But the one I really want to show you, Clancy, is the leadwood. So I was in the middle of talking about how a termite-resistant, wood borer-resistant type of wood, big, solid, heavy, and beautiful, is clearly for human beings a big draw card in terms of building material. Come on, leadwoods, I need you to make a nice appearance for us. Interestingly, the leadwood is related to one of the most common tree families that we see out here. So you could quite easily describe this area as bush willow woodland. We're surrounded by the various species of things like red bush willow, variable bush willow, russet bush willow. That's actually one of the predominant tree species that you see out here. The leadwood is part of the same family, but now become an incredibly rare tree species. And ecologists started to realize, especially when they did research and learning interesting information about how long leadwood trees live, they started to realize that they were incredibly valuable, not only alive but also dead. They provide ecosystems for all kinds of homes for the different animals out here. And what I think would be really nice, since we're kind of very close to the Milwaukee drainage line, and that's where you're going to get some of your best protected tree species, maybe we should do a little bit of a drive up the drainage line and have a look at the various trees that we see. I think that would be a nice plan. It's also always beautiful down there and a good place to find leopards. Alright, well, I'm going to tell you a secret since you did ask. And I was chatting a bit about how I love snakes. So, Shannon in Ohio, you'd like to know if there's any bug species that I don't like. It's my one secret. Sorry, Shannon. Perhaps the secret will wait for another day. No, I'm just kidding, I'll tell you. I just wanted to show you these little warthogs. Hello, little one. Oh, aren't you brave? Keeping a close eye on us. Where's Mom? I don't see Mom. Where's your mommy? I love how many tiny little warthog babies we've been seeing. They really are absolutely irresistible at this age. Look at that little tufts of white fur coming out of its cheek. And I mean, this one is maybe 2 months old at the most. Out already foraging and eating solid food. Here's Mom. I don't see her at all. It's very unusual to see babies like this out on their own. Maybe Mom is behind the termite mound or something. 2 little ones. Well, we've just come around down the Leadwood Road corner. It's the first time I've seen these warthogs on this road. Although they've obviously had a burrow here. Ah, there you are. I wondered. Mustn't be so far from your babies. There's too many things out here. She's come to poke her nose around the termite mound and investigate a possible threat. There, look at how perfectly you can see those bottom tusks. She's got the nice, beautiful, big curling tusks, and she's a big girl. Those are quite large tusks for a female, but when she next lifts her head, have a look at the tusks underneath. There you go, you can see it underneath the top tusk. And those are the tusks that you want to look out for. Shame. I've noticed the warthog's looking particularly thin, and for her especially, the strain on her body, will still be lactating. She's had to raise these two little ones, and I think it's only two that she's got at the moment. And I think it's putting significant strain on them. So these animals eat the roots and vegetation around us in various forms. But it's in the drought, in this particular drought, they're kind of restricted as to what they can eat and how much they can eat. And lucky for her, her babies are now starting to eat solid food. Otherwise, she'd be really struggling. Oh, look at her bristle. Hair's all standing up on the back of its neck. Little boy. Got 4 little warts. Too cute. Now, of course, they have not known a life any different than the one they're currently leading, which is struggling to find nice green shoots. Luckily, we've got a bit of green coming through after that rain. And Nigel, you were wondering if the animals ever get bored with eating the same food, or if it's just a human trait. Nigel, I've actually often wondered that. I think definitely there's a level of happiness, there must be, to them when things start to go green and they can actually snack on something juicy and delicious rather than dry old grass roots. Yes, little one, you don't know any different. I think it's probably, I think it's a little bit too anthropomorphic on our part. But we know that animals prefer certain food types. The elephants are thrilled at this time of year to target all of the marula fruit that's falling down on the ground. And they'll move from sort of fruiting species of tree to the next one and so on. Whether or not that's because they're bored with the food, I'm not sure. We were discussing a primate study that was done with 2 monkeys, and both were requested to do the same task, which they both performed. One got a cucumber and one got a grape. And the monkey that got the cucumber was very unimpressed with his side of the deal. I don't know, primates are a little bit different though. They come with a certain level of anthropomorphic feeling to them as it is. I guess for the most part it's just about survival. You're looking for, it doesn't necessarily have to be the tastiest food, but you're looking for something that's going to give you the most nutrition. And they're actually, I'm going to start speaking with my voice much lower because they're starting to get brave and they're starting to wander across in our direction. And I'll keep my movements nice and slow so that we don't startle them in any way. And the little ones only just starting to get the protrusions on their face that gives the warthog their name. And we spoke quite a bit about that yesterday around the Arathusa airstrip and whether or not they're born with them. And I said that I thought they were just incredibly tiny. And it's only now that you can start to see them coming through. Little bits of grizzle, soft cartilage, hard cartilage, a bit of tendinous tissue in there. And of course, one way of identifying males from females. Females have 2 warts on their face, males have 3. And we discussed at length what purpose they might be used for, because I've never considered the option of them having nerve endings in those particular warts. But the fact that the males have more than the females suggests to me that it is a defensive structure, particularly since they're positioned, as you can see, on that female as she wanders forward, positioned around the eyes, just beneath it, so a way of protecting vulnerable spots, especially with those long, broad heads. I must admit I struggle with aging warthogs once they reach a certain age. But these little ones, I would say, are somewhere in the region of 2 months old, with their little mohawks down the back. Little tails wagging happily. And in the next few months, probably about 6 months old, you're going to start to see their tusks coming through. rather than those little patches of white fur. I'm quite surprised to see them foraging so far from mom. I think it's just because they really have to spread out in order to find anything to really snack on. Shame, she's definitely looking a bit thin. And that feeding posture that's so typical on their ankles, or their wrists actually, is probably a more accurate term, since it's their front legs. It's always interesting to watch the way as well that they select what they're eating, because we see a bright green plant and automatically think that maybe it's good for them to munch on, and they walk straight past it in favor of a patch of slightly browner grass. But obviously they know and are guided by a very powerful sense of smell as to where the best sources of food will be. And it's not unheard of for them to really dig down quite deep in order to get hold of the various forbs. A word of advice though, a lot of these big roots underneath the ground are actually toxic for people, so if you ever find yourself in a survival situation, don't follow warthogs and try and eat what they are eating. They've got a very different digestive system to ours. That being said, obviously we automatically make the association with pigs. And Anna-Marie, you were wondering if they are a popular source of food for local people. And yes, they are. They are animals that are popular as a meal. They are sold as venison or game meat in certain shops. So they are eaten. And it's we're so fortunate to be in the position that we are in at the moment within the really well-protected areas of the Sabi Sands. But as I'm sure you know, South Africa has a considerable socio-economic divide with a lot of very, very poor people, and very often they live on the outskirts of reserves. And what they do is they put out snares to catch things like warthogs in order to supplement their diet. And unfortunately, it's not always just warthog that still that's unfortunate in itself, but it's not always warthog or antelope that gets stuck in those snares. It can also do considerable damage to animals such as wild dogs or lions or any hapless creature that happens to stumble into them. But they are something that is favored in terms of meals. And not just by humans, of course. The reason I said it's unusual for mom to be so far away from her babies is that there's a lot out here that wouldn't mind snacking on a warthog. Tingana, of course, is the first option that comes to mind. Tingana seems to have specialized in hunting burrowing animals. You had that incredible sighting with Peter Pretorius where Tingana actually disappeared right down into the warthog burrow and caught that baby warthog. So they're on the menu for a lot of things, people included, and the original people that inhabited this area would definitely have targeted warthogs, but not defenseless animals by any means. Sorry, got distracted by a starling calling. Now, warties have moved off, and I think so should we. Let's go look for some endangered tree species, Clancy, and possibly some other endangered animals along the way. Oh, yes. While I make my way down, before I disappear off, I thought I would finish. I thought I'd got away with it, but Kirsty reminded me. So, Shannon, you were wondering about if there are any bugs that I don't like. I'm okay with almost everything. There's one exception, and that's centipedes. It is irrational on my part. I don't know what it is, but I struggle. I mean, I've obviously got to the point now where I've had to come to terms with it and interact with them and catch them out of out of guest rooms and remove them. There's something about centipedes and I don't know what it is. I don't get on well with them. So that's my secret. If you could keep it between us, that would be wonderful. And I do get teased about it on a very regular basis. It's the one thing though, it is my one little, and it's entirely my problem, and it's probably because I don't know enough about them or understand enough about them. But there you go, a little bit of secret into one small thing that really freaks Jamie out. And while I make my way towards the Mulwati drainage line, let's have a look and see what Scott has been up to.
So, thanks to Cheeky Cheetah's request to see a snake, and then her promise to make whichever presenter finds that snake their favorite, that is what I have been focused on trying to do. It's a close on impossible task, sadly, Cheeky Cheetah, and we don't see snakes nearly as often as we would like to, but they are here. And I've just driven past a tree that a couple of weeks back we saw a beautiful big male boomslangen, green snake, highly venomous, thankfully not highly aggressive though, and because they're back-fanged, they are not a common snake to cause us any trouble as humans, even though they are highly venomous. We will keep keeping our eyes out. One of the best ways to find snakes, Cheeky Cheetah, is actually to respond to birds' alarm calling. And sadly that hasn't happened this morning, but it's an important one to remember. Birds are often the best indicators to find snakes. Barbara's interested to know if the snake was removed from Nikki and my bedroom, and I think it was successfully removed. It was found in there the day after we moved out, and it was a puff adder, another highly venomous snake, one that does cause a lot more problems for humans. They're quite sluggish and slow moving snakes, and because of that nature they often get stood on by humans, and naturally if somebody stood on you, you would probably also bite them. And they've got a nasty cytotoxic venom which basically just rots your flesh and often causes some form of amputation to occur. Either you'll lose a finger or maybe a little bit more than that depending on where the bite is. So we've had a few snakes around Inga's house where some of us stay. It's basically the couple's accommodation, and also Eugene, the tech wizard. So it's the five of us across there, Brent and Jamie and Nikki and myself, along with Eugene. And we've had a close encounter with the Mozambican spitting cobra that Nikki nearly stood on. And it was a good lesson for her because she never used the torch that I bought her for her birthday, the flashlight, a really cool, girl-friendly small one. And since she nearly stood on the cobra, she's been carrying the torch around and even shouting at me if I'm not even shining my torch when I'm walking.
They were spending a few days.
So there was that Mozambican spinning cobra. There was also a moment when Brent walked back into his bedroom, I think after having a quick swim, and he saw a snake slithering up into the bed that Jamie was sleeping in. And thankfully it was just a variegated bush snake, so not a venomous one, but understandably Brent's heart nearly stopped when he saw that happening. Jamie was none the wiser. She was fast asleep, and I think Brent left her to sleep until the snake slithered away. I haven't seen any little warthogs yet this season, so really looking forward to getting a few sightings of them. It sounded like you had a great sighting with Jamie with those little warthog now. They're incredibly cute little animals. The only one I've actually seen, it wasn't in the flesh, it was the one that Tingana plucked out of a burrow. It was absolutely tiny. It was probably only that big, and it probably had never come out of its burrow. But Tingana, a big male leopard, sniffed it out and managed to catch one of them. But now, a couple of weeks later, they are out and about and looking forward to seeing more of them. Thanks very much, Cheesy Cheetah, for acknowledging how difficult it actually is to find snakes. Cheesy Cheetah's obviously a bit of a snake enthusiast and said he spends a lot of time looking for diamondback rattlers over in Wisconsin. Really pretty snakes, similar to the puff adders actually. The adders and the rattlers are very similar, although none of our snakes have that unique rattling device. And what the adders will do to alert us of their presence is they'll actually hiss. Hence the name puff adder. They puff their body up and then exhale to try and warn us. Sadly though, it's not the most alarming of noises, and for a lot of people who are not necessarily aware of the sound to look out for, without knowing what to look for, it's easy to overlook that sound and then miss the snake's warnings and then possibly stand on it, giving it no other option other than to really strike out. And that's a very important thing to remember with snakes. It's highly unlikely that they're going to chase you down the road in the hope that they can bite you. They're typically only ever going to bite you when they're feeling threatened. And most of the time that will be when we are trying to catch them or kill them. Unless, of course, like I say, you get some sluggish snakes like the puff adders that are simply going to be minding their own business on a pathway and be a little bit too sluggish to move out of the way before you get there. That's uncommon though, and most snakes slither off before you get to see them. For those of you who are lucky enough to enjoy the sighting of a black mamba that I had with VM on camera a couple of weeks back, you'll appreciate just how quickly they can move.
Sorry guys to rudely interrupt Scott like that, but look what we've got here. What looks like our first carmine bee-eater of the season. I know Scott was talking about them earlier, so we've been such a treat, and as it happens, Clancy, sitting in the endangered leadwood tree. How terribly, terribly convenient of it. This is awesome, first one of the season. I had to get the first something. Didn't manage with the impala or the wildebeest, but we got the first carmine bee-eater. Such beautiful birds. And they're one of the latest birds, bee-eater or migrant species to actually arrive. So this is one of the first ones that we've seen. You can see the typical turquoise crown on the top, and then the carmine color, obviously that beautiful pink that gives them their name. And for all new viewers, this will be a first for your bird list. He's actually killed something, caught something there. And he's currently using that long bee-eater bill to remove any kind of a sting. And that's why they've got those bills. Awesome. Gone. I'm not sure what it was. It was probably something like, oh, there's a whole load of them. There's 3 that I've counted. And even juveniles, actually, I think. There was a slightly duller color. Yeah, that's a juvenile. That's awesome. What a cool moment. Busy doing exactly what bee-eaters do best and why they have those long bills. A way of catching an insect that might be able to sting back and then thrashing it in the typical bee-eater fashion on a log or a stick, something from side to side. wonderful to see. And as far as I know, they come here to breed. So we could well get them nesting in the drainage line. This is the perfect place to be and perfect place to spot them, because we're sitting in a drainage line, which is where they choose to nest. They like to make those holes in sandbanks. And if I spot one, I will show it to you. I'm sure we've spoken about them before. The bee-eaters and the kingfishers tend to prefer those sorts of areas. Yay, first carmine bee-eater of the season, and what a beautiful sighting in the morning sun. You can see those colors in that elongated, sharp tail feather, all brilliantly diagnostic. A little bit of a ninja eye stripe as well, if you look really closely across the eye. And as I said, very conveniently sitting in a leadwood tree. So for Clancy, this is the protected tree I was talking about. It is illegal and a finable offense to cut down a leadwood tree, either alive or dead. This one is very much alive. And the most diagnostic tool in order to have a look and see that it's a leadwood is the way that the little secondary branches grow almost vertically up into the air. It's also got a very crocodile-like bark, which I can't show you at the moment, really, since it's hidden by the bushes. And just to continue our discussion before we finish off, Alyssa, you wanted to know if it's illegal to cut down marula trees, and if those who utilize marula products do so by creating marula farms. And to the best of my knowledge, yes, it is illegal to cut down marula trees. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen. I would still say it is something that might occur, especially in more desperate areas where they're desperate for firewood and for building material that they can utilize from the land. But those who make marula products actually don't know if they farm them, do they? Brian, do you know? No. I'm actually not sure. I imagine they would have to, especially for something like the amarula liqueur, where they must go through. I mean, it's quite easy to collect marula fruits. They all drop down, and the lovely thing is that they ripen off the tree. Very good point, Alyssa. I know that it's quite a slow-growing tree. It takes them a very long time to get to that mature size, at which point they start producing fruit. And of course, you also want to, because they're dioecious, so males and females on separate trees, or separate trees are male and female. Oh, what a beautiful spectacle. These flashes of pink that we've got to see. What an awesome moment. I hope you guys have all added the southern carmine bee-eater to your bird list. And they're actually quite big bee-eaters as well. They're one of the stockier ones and one of the longer ones. Close to, I would say, probably about 15 inches in length if you count that long tail. And actually that's a different species. There's a white-fronted there. Nisa, I'm glad you're enjoying it. I think both the birds and the trees in which they're nesting are absolutely stunning. Sorry, I said that was a white-fronted. It wasn't. It was a European bee-eater, I think. Where's it gone? There, yes. European bee-eater, not a white-fronted bee-eater. And Country West, I think I actually misidentified the juveniles. I mean, I'm not sure. That one really looked like a carmine bee-eater, but darker in color. You were wondering why the juveniles might be there if they come here for breeding. The same thought occurred to me. I wouldn't be surprised if it takes them over a year to get their adult coloring. I'll double check for you, Country West. Maybe it wasn't a juvenile that I spotted. Maybe it was one of the European bee-eaters, slightly duller in color. Bear in mind, of course, I'm looking at a much smaller screen, trying to look through binoculars, but I suspect I got that wrong. No, it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't really make sense, does it, for the juveniles to be here if they come here to breed, unless they've bred already in one particular area. They might have 2 breeding seasons throughout the year. You never know. I mean, birds like bee-eaters, rollers, their time from hatching to fledging, so growing their adult feathers and flying out, is, for rollers, it's somewhere around the region of about a month. So it could happen that they breed more than once in a year, and that the juveniles are accompanying them. I'm not sure, Country West. I'll have to double check. If anyone can offer me any information or correction about that particular aspect, just let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Oh, yay. Beautiful carmine bee-eaters. Let's continue down in the beautiful Mulwati for the last few moments of our sunrise safari. And while I make my way along the beautiful drainage line in the morning light, Jenny, you were wondering if Brent and Andrew have made it back yet. Last I heard, they had made it to the airport and were about to get on the plane in Harare. So I know that many of you were aware of their travel plan issues, which of course had nothing to do with planning. It was entirely coincidental. But yes, Jenny, much to my relief at this point, because I'm glad that they had a wonderful holiday, but it's really time that Andrew brings Brent back to me now. They will be on their way shortly. So you'll be seeing them, I hope, by tomorrow afternoon, that you can look forward to that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a wonderful morning as always to share with you, and thank you for joining us. Thank you for your questions and comments, and thank you to the wonderful Brian for all of his company and camera work and animal spotting and tree dodging, the amazing stuff our cameramen do. Have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. I'm going to send you back across so that he can back across to Scott so that he can say goodbye to you as well. Cheers, guys.
Well, a pleasant surprise to finish off the safari. Well, a few pleasant surprises, and well done to Jamie for finding the first carmine bee-eaters of the season just a little bit early on. I was telling Susan, I think it was, or Sharon, that was one of the things I'm looking forward to seeing now that I'm back from leave. Now another surprise then, this dazzle of zebra. We don't see too much of in this area, so this is a pleasant surprise. A little foal there on the right. And there's time just for one last question from Chris Rogue, and she would like to know if Nikki and myself managed to see any animals while we were on leave. And we did, in fact. We went and stayed in Langebaan, which is a place up the west coast of Cape Town, and there's the West Coast National Park, where we were lucky enough to see some eland, a very large antelope, as well as some ostriches. We don't have huge amounts of game there, no predators other than caracal, which we sadly didn't see any of. But we did see a snake, a boomslang, and some ostriches and some eland. Other than that, we were in the urban jungle, so didn't see too much wildlife. Well, what a morning it's been. It slowly gained momentum as the morning unfolded, and it ended up being quite successful, I feel. And thank you very much to all of your contributions and questions, and we will see you all on the Sunset Safari. Oh, I found tracks of Karula, so we're going to know where to look for her this afternoon. They're not too far from here. See you later.